Hey, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another LEAP conversational talk. Today, we are very, very lucky to be hearing from Martin Bascope, professor at UC Chile. And we were super lucky over at Teachers College to hear Martin live last year talk about the sustainability lighthouses. And so when Molly was searching around for people who are good to talk, I in 1 second said that Martin would be an amazing speaker for LEAP because he really is at that intersection of translating climate science into actionable things happening in the world. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Martin, give him a warm round of applause to hear about building teacher learning pathways for climate change education.
So thank you very much to everyone in the room and in the virtual room too. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks to the organizers for the invitation. I'm going to try to make it in 30 minutes so we can have an exchange and talk. I will try to make it as fast as I can. So the summary of this presentation, I will start with a presentation from where I came from and what do I do. I will take a deeper look on MICA project that it's a project on interactive maps and resources for climate change education, and two recent studies that were published this year to a better understanding on what do we mean or what are the key elements to consider when designing teacher professional development on climate change, and some empirical results of a revision of educational materials that were produced by teachers here in Chile, and then a couple of questions for the discussion. So, as you know, my name is Martin Bascope. Here is where I came from. I work as a teacher in teacher education, working with training teachers from preschool and primary schools in the south of Chile. And I am also a leading researcher in CEDEL, that it's the Center for Local Development from a university. And our intention is to be a transdisciplinary hub for of international excellence on research, training, and community collaboration in theory and practice of sustainable local development. So we have been working a lot. I'm also directing an outdoor museum. This is our educational orchard with an outdoor room. Classroom for learning in a wetland, in an orchard, in learning with all the senses. So as a university, we also receive a lot of preschool kids and children from schools to go and make this educational outdoor activities. And we have also created different educational resources for sustainability and climate change learning. So these are a couple of examples: the educational biodigesters, the sustainability lighthouse, that it's an initiative to work on and project-based learning based on sustainability local challenges from schools. So we have a lot of materials to promote that kind of research, like for kids to be researchers from an early stage and taking responsibility for the local sustainability challenges. Also, Eputroquinquimun, the region where I live, has an important influence of the Mapuche people. This is a indigenous population that it's very important here in Chile. So we make this crossing between science and scientific learning and local Mapuche knowledge. And I will talk you today about these interactive maps for climate change and how we have transit from technological educational materials to an educational pathway for teachers, like a trajectory, a sequence of different learnings after almost 8 to almost 10 years of collaboration with the different institution, teachers, and this mix of development and research processes. So regarding this Mika, this is 3.0. It's the third iteration of rethinking and producing new resources. So we started with this kit. It's a set of resources that offer teachers opportunity to teach climate change using scientifically updated materials. So we have this maps, some teacher guides for working in classrooms. There's an app with augmented reality, and you put it in front of the maps, and you gather videos, figures, graphs of recent research on climate change issues in different countries. We have two regions in Chile, the one metropolitan area, and also in the south of Chile where I lived, and we also have some in Colombia, in Mexico City, in Sao Paulo in Brazil, and also in Peru in Lima. So the idea of these maps is to foster a more quickly. One of the problem of climate science and scientific updated is that they take too long to reach to the school. There are some there is research that it takes about 10 to 15 years for a new discovery to reach the school. So this was a way of trying to make that faster. So we started with that idea. This is an example of a map with a lot of different research made by universities in the region. So and we connect that with some activities that you can make. Here in the lower right side, you can find some educational guides and sequences. We have this app, so you can see also some graphs and figures and videos that has been developed by researchers on climate researchers. So this was the first part. And after this, we also developed these environmental stations with different. This is a low cost. This is not a professional meteorological station, but you can measure water turbidity. Sorry. Temperature, humidity. It's kind of Arduino based. It's not Arduino, but similar. Solar radiation, noise, effective CO2, radiation, the UV index, and many data. We already put these stations in about 50 schools in different parts of Chile, and we have this central cloud with all the data that it's gathering every day in different schools. So we have two modes, like the station and experiment mode. So you can take data every 13 minutes or every 30 minutes or 30 seconds, depending on the mode. So you can take it to field work, or you can put it in the school, and we give the schools two stations each, so they can use it in different modes. And all this information, it's in our website, where you can download your own data or compare with stations in other schools and other territories. So this is a project that we have been developing in the last 2 years, especially the station part. And the second important and where I'm going to be more in depth point is how can we not only give this very interesting and useful materials, but rather how to facilitate the learning on climate change education. Because we found that many times teachers did not felt capable of conducting climate change education lessons for different reasons. So this is not just about creating more good quality sciences, but to understand why those teachers are not feeling comfortable with this, and what other, not just scientific competencies, but attitudes and also other competencies, skills that are crucial for a integral understanding of climate change. Because, as you must know, this is a very complex issue that it's not just so we have to find like innovative ways of mitigation and adaptation to climate change, and this is much more complex. So that is why we said we need to create like a clear pathway for with different learning experiences for teachers to feel capable and competent in climate change education. And that is why we started to think on a educational pathway. For this purpose, we I will present you a couple of studies that were kind of the baseline to give us some inputs on how to design this pathway. So the first one is a systematic literature review on teacher professional development on climate change education. So we review some, there was very few indexed articles in Spanish. The great majority was in English. So we make a selection and a screening, then judge the eligibility of the different articles, and we reach to 38 final articles, including also not just indexed scientific articles, but also some book chapters and other materials in Spanish. Some of them came from African experience, Latin America, not only Europe and North America, because that is where most of the research it's developed now. And just as a way of summarizing this climate change education approaches from more theoretical to more practical, there's the idea of critical thinking, critical analysis of information, how to confront misinformation, post-truth discourses, also connected with scientific and local knowledge. This is very important. It's not just about learning scientific data, but also how to visualize it in your local context, and understand some and differentiating like science related and not related with climate change. The idea of an interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary approaches are very present. And here also the idea of emotional competences, and this is very, and it's growing a lot in the literature, how to address anxiety, empathy, and collaboration. This is very important because many times this is an obstacle for teachers, especially in early ages, like preschool or the initial grades in primary education. Many times teachers do not teach this kind of contents to kind of to protect the little kids, not to worry them about almost apocalyptic scenarios in the future. So how do we construct this with an idea that a colleague from the United States, Dr. Chaula, says, with a like constructive hope? No, like this is we need like this practical sense of hope, how to take to action climate change, rather than just staying in the diagnosis and the forecast because if we stay just in the information, that could be very overwhelming. So active learning, including all senses, and working not only in better skills to diagnose, but also to adapt, to mitigate. So how can we create educational experiences that drive kids to action, that give them hope, but based on creating researching capabilities that kind of make them more self like to have more how do you say it, that they feel more competent on creating strategies for adaptation and mitigation. So the idea of transdiscipline, how do we understand from local knowledge for the intergenerational exchanges between kids and their grandparents, that gives you an idea of also two things. On the one side, to connect climate change with your own local and everyday reality, and also to create this exchange between like local narratives on climate change and the scientific mainstream narratives. So that's on the one side. This is study. I gave you the QR and you can, this is open access, you can download it to have more detail on this. And the second study, let me see how I'm going with time to see how fast I have to go here, sorry. Okay. So this study, the second one, was published in the Journal of Environmental Education this year, and it's a more empirical research based on materials produced by teachers, mainly primary teachers, to kind of feed how can we design a pathway for teacher training and teacher education based on this on what are right now teachers what are designing now teachers, right? Like what are the main focus, what are the competences that they are trying to develop, what kind of productions are they making. So these are the main research questions that we were looking for. What are the characteristics of the teaching materials that the teachers produced? This was made in two regions in Chile with a lot of sequences, planning, portfolios, logbooks that teachers made for the lessons. Another question was which were the main obstacles of this process and reported by teachers. And a third questions that we made based on the previous research that we made this systematic review is how topics on environmental justice, socio-emotional aspects, and how the perspectives of children are taken into account in these productions. So we take a special look on that. So in terms of methods, we make a revision of this coding around these three research questions. We made a double code and we get involved of a third expert in case of contradictory coding. And then we group these codes into categories. In terms of, you can see in parentheses here, the amount of documents that we revised. So logbooks and portfolio were 16, posters that were made by teachers were 6, presentations of their project-based learning experiences, we also revised 6, and also we revised learning sequences that has at least 4 classroom or outdoor experiences in a sequence. We revised 23 of them, and we get this amount of codes related with each research question, so about 650 codes that I will try to summarize in the following graphs. So just a minute here. sorry. Okay. So here, first, what's being taught? And here, it's an interesting thing that we group categories on pro-environmental practices and adaptation practices, like projects and planning that was that tried not only to understand about climate change, for instance, water scarcity, how climate change affects biodiversity, impacts of climate change, contamination, agriculture, how like understanding more about how climate change is affecting, again, diagnosing, but rather pro-environmental practices that is what can we do about it, right? How can we adapt? How can we mitigate this? There was, if you sum all the diagnosis versus the pro-environmental adaptation, you will find that this is a little, there are not too many, or in other words, when you teach about climate change education, there's a tendency to focus on the diagnostic, right? And not on developing skills to adapt or to mitigate, to create more resilient communities, for instance, or to promote agency towards climate change. Okay, so another result, it's what how is it's being taught, right? So a lot of exhibition, trying to give some discussion or reflection, but it's interesting how many of the climate change education opportunities are focused on creating and on more communication products or multimedia to understand this and try to produce like and many times this is and what we saw is that they try to replicate like the diagnosis of climate change in different contexts, like how climate change is occurring in our context, and then we create communication campaigns, we create documentaries or podcasts. So it's about communicating the effects of climate change, and not too much on art based or the importance of field work, or constructing models. So there's a kind of a focus on keep communicating. Okay, so again, I think this is connected with the idea of keep diagnosing, right? And where is being taught a lot of inside of the classroom, there's a tendency to go to the school surroundings, and but it in a general sense. Many times we are going to go out in a general sense, not where. So when we find in the code that they will work on a wetland or a dam or a commercial center in one case, forest, this was not clear enough at the beginning. Okay, so there's a big tendency on working these things in the classrooms or in general in the school surroundings. So that's another result. Which knowledge, competences, attitudes are trying to be developed in these materials that we revise? And there's a very clear tendency on developing research skills. That's a great thing. But in the discussion now, we try to go a little more in depth on why research skills, which other skills, more like sustainability or climate change skills, can be developed that are not present here. And a lot of understand, describe, explain, communicate, maybe that basic skills, and how do you say, like first, many times we said like first order skills, And for instance, representing or modeling that it's a more complex skills was not too present. Interpretation, creating dialogue, analyzing, or reflection was not were not the more common, but rather a more how can we describe, understand, and explain climate change, and also find some ways to research. So that's another important result. I will go then to the in the discussion we can talk a little bit more about this. And this is I think it's an interesting result on which were the difficulties to implement climate change education. And many times when you ask this to teachers, we that work at teacher research or educational research, lack of time is always the main one. Like, why don't you conduct educational innovation? Well, I don't have time to do so. We don't have flexibility in our institution to make this kind of innovation. But this time, the more present, and this is very interesting, it was lack of student competencies. I can't conduct climate change research in my context because students will not understand it. And this is super. I think this is an important thing to take care about. It's like this science is so complex. Many times teachers don't feel able to communicate it, so they don't think that students will be able to understand it too. So there's an urgency here to try to land these kinds of contents, so students feel more capable, or teachers feel capable of learning, like, to scale down these things and try to create, like, step by step, getting into feel more competent in research these topics, or create local solutions for climate change. There's also I think on the idea of going outside of the schools, that's always a little difficult, but many times the first barrier was, no, I can't do it with my students because they won't have the competence, and that's another important issue. And finally, another thing that we found in this revision was that the almost complete absence of socio-ecological justice topics. So we focus a lot on the scientific side, on measuring temperature, measuring pollution, measuring I don't know, physical measurement, but we do not discuss about what are the socio-ecological, what are the implications on justice issues, what happened with inequalities, what happened with I don't know, there's a lot of social processes around climate change that are important also to be discussed, and they are absent of the planning. Social-emotional aspects were almost absent too. So and this is also very important, because if you take this into consideration, maybe you will find less barriers to talk about it. And it's important to create teachers that are capable of coping with these social-emotional aspects, and not as absent as the other perspective, but in many of the documents that we revised, the students' perspectives about this were absent, and this can be also related with not incorporating, for instance, social-emotional aspects to the planning. So with this into consideration, we create this pedagogical and curricular criteria for the design of a pathway on climate change education. So it was very important that it's modular, that's flexible, so teachers can take different courses in different times, and not presenting like a big curricula that it's very difficult for teachers to conduct, considering their working conditions. It has to be progressive, like going from basics to more complex issues, based on context, and we've also find that it's very important that has the majority was an in-person, not only like online or asynchronic opportunities, because it's very important to share experiences, to reflect as a group. So this was the pathway that we defined: 3 modules, 3 axes, one about knowledge, about climate change, basically science, climate change science, but not only from a natural science perspective, but also a transdisciplinary approach to understanding climate sciences, more dialogue for they to be able to discuss socio-environmental problems. Another axis that goes into didactics, and we have 2 axes here, in 2 sub-axes, we can say. One is based on technology, how to conduct research with the technologies that we have been developing, like the environmental fieldwork stations. Also digital resources for spatial exploration, and how can we incorporate artificial intelligence also. And the other thing is more like the methodological, like how to plan for teaching climate change, project-based learning, design thinking, participatory methodologies, that is action and service and community participation. And finally, the third axis that kind of arose after the research process, what the professional reflection axis. Is very important to find places to talk to other colleagues on what was a good strategy and what didn't work, and the social emotional aspects behind teaching this kind of topics. It's very important. So we need learning communities that find like spaces of trust and collaboration between colleagues, and we find like different strategies, and there's a lot of materials on how to conduct this kind of project, but also creating capacities in schools on how to find external resources for that, and manage external projects to give better opportunities in their courses. So this is the pathway that we get to design. We have we also validated and prove how does these different courses work. This is another part. I can't share that for time issues here with you, but we make an expert revision, we make an empirical validation of this trajectory, and this is what we are kind of having as a result of this project that is ending next week. We close this project, and we are trying to get more fundings to continue to getting a wider audience on this. So for the discussion, and I think I'm already in time, so this first idea on how can we transit less on the diagnostic and more on mitigation or adaptation strategies based on local reality. Another thing, it's how can we create more appropriate teaching methodologies? There's a tendency on focus on media campaigns, the use of multimedia, and more like expository formats, and how can we make it like more maybe design-based or problem-based, or how can we create solutions for the community and creating this active hope that we were talking at the beginning, like I feel capable of making a change in my context, so this will bring me the idea of maybe scaling up or in the future. Another thing about the depth of skills and competencies to be developed, it's enough to have good research competencies, and because that was the main the main competencies that was trying to be developed by teachers, but also explaining and understanding. But maybe we also need to create more empathy We need to create more resilience, more agency, and those topics were not present. And how can we connect this research process with more complex skills and competencies? And finally, I think for this audience, I think it's important to think on how can we create spaces for horizontal dialogue between climate scientists and schools. I think this dialogue can be mutually beneficial. It's not just about delivering scientific results, but rather to also create active hope, create a more a sense of agency toward climate change. How can we create more spaces for citizen science to not only access to open access resources, but also working together on that and creating more spaces for transdisciplinary research? So that's my bullet points for the discussion, and I'm really open to hear your questions or comments. So thank you very much.
I have a question on your last slide, Martin, about open access resources. Are there any that you have found to be particularly useful that you could talk about?
Yes, I think that we have been creating, I can think of a couple that we have been using for specifically for climate change education. We have a big open access educational resources center that it's called CREA, CREA, right? This is a collaboration that we have this Latin America STEM network with different partners that have been creating resources for climate change and sustainability education. And there you can find a lot of those, like reading from early childhood to adolescence. There is also some resources developed by the Office of Climate Educations, the OCE. This is a very interesting collaboration between the IPCC scientists and we have been invited as pedagogical experts to find like this how can we in simple words translate this scientific data into educational resources, and they have been developing a lot of very useful resources for teaching in their website, oce.org, I think it is. And now I also get and I'm exploring what you also have been developing at LEAP, right? But my perspective on this is that I think there is a kind of an urgency, not only to provide like guidelines or ideas on how to conduct, but also to being able for teachers to being able to have a better understanding of the complete experience. So I think that there's a need for more like a clear view of the complete projects with a provided by teachers and implemented by teachers, because many times like raw data or super structured guidelines are not like the best way to reach to teachers, and many times like cases like more ethnographical follow-up of, I don't know, a semester of climate change education many times could be much more enlightening for teachers, and that is very scarce. It's very there are not too many resources like that.
Okay, hi
Yes.
Martin. Very
Great.
nice presentation.
Thank you.
So at one point of your slides and presentation, you said that the community is more focused on climate change diagnostics rather than mitigation and adaptation strategies or policies, right? Or actions. And can you please elaborate more on that and why that happened in according to your experience? Thank you.
Great. Yeah. I think I think there's I would say like simplistic or not too, there's a simplistic way of saying that maybe we are not taking care about climate change because we don't know what is happening, right? Like that's kind of a first statement with, and maybe it's when you're starting to work on climate change education, is that like people has to know what is happening, and there's a direct connection that of knowing implies acting, and that it's not straightforward, right? Like many times, even when if you know a lot about climate change, and you go very in depth into the diagnosis, we had found, and some research also have found, that can take you to the opposite. Not like this is super that like the forecast is super negative. We can't do anything about it, so it took you to enact and many times to even to negate or say that this can't be truth. This is too this is too hard, and so many times like the overflow of information can lead you to the opposite of what you want. That you if you know, you can act towards, but many times goes the opposite way. So instead of focusing too much on the diagnostic, maybe it's important to create the capabilities of and science can be very useful in that way to produce like small local solutions, to produce like new knowledge that can be useful for the communities, for the school communities. So my perspective on this is that it's not a thing of not knowing. I think that the amount of information that we have about the evidence on the existence and the importance of climate change is it's there, and we have to do it's like create maybe more spaces to create a more profound link with your context, with nature, with create more profound bounds to create empathy towards your community, towards the environmental and social aspects from your community, that maybe that must be, maybe can be more efficient in creating agents for change, right? Another thing that happens is that you put the responsibility on kids, like you are the future, you have to make a change, and many times that idea, it's also, so it has to be a balance between both, because when you put all the responsibility in the kids' shoulders, you can also have a response on why do I have to take care of the things that you have been, this is your fault, right? This is another generation fault. Why do I have to act and make the effort to kind of solution your problem, right? So it has to be like a balance between like scientific evidence results and also creating opportunities from them to develop interesting, innovative solutions for the territories.
Hi, Martin. Kostal
Hi.
here. Really nice lecture. I am from the industry, specifically from the healthcare industry. So I see
Mm-hmm.
transdisciplinary research here. So I want to understand your take on climate data science and its effect on schools and healthcare as well. And how do you
Mm-hmm.
see them turning into an actionable items as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, here maybe I can give you an example of some of the because we have conducted a lot of project-based learning experiences with the really from kids, especially from ages 4 to 10 year old, in for they to understand and also create some solutions on this. And in my region especially, there's a big importance of the, as I told you at the beginning, of the Mapuche people and Mapuche knowledge about nature, about specific properties of different herbs, and so we have been working, for instance, on traditional medicine topics, and the importance of biodiversity of forest, for instance, to preserve the many species that are endangered from the forestal or monocultive industry. Um, so we have been creating spaces for an intergenerational dialogue between kids and their grandparents in rural areas. So on that, we work, for instance, on that specific case of some kids that create a like a health care, how do you say it in English, I don't know, but that has a lot of different herbal products with like oils and essences and infusions teas, and they provide that, they create a little book and provide and gave them to the local how do you say it? It's like a little hospital in that village. And they were received by the director of this little hospital, and they get recognized in their own communities for the contribution to like for this research on traditional medicine, and and also create a different bond between the different herbs and species that are important for the local culture. So I think that's a kind of an example of transdisciplinary research with working with local ancient medicine women and the local hospital and the kids. Um, and there's a lot of knowledge about also we have been working on that on traditional food, like local food systems, low scale food systems with biodiverse orchards, and the impact that has as a strategy for adaptation to climate change. Uh, and we have also have been working about on the local knowledge on fauna behavior, and how I don't know, different kinds of birds. When you find a bird that usually is in the mountain and goes down the mountain, that tells you something about climate, about raining, or about some. There's and we have a project there on intergenerational exchange between birds' behavior and climate, as climate indicators. That has been also very interesting, and ended with a big how do you say it, like a showcase in the cultural center of that village where we work too. Uh, so those, I think, are cases that we have been maybe are more of interest for the schools on the one side, but I think that if the scientific community also understand on the importance of researching on these topics, there can be a very schools can be a very good bridge between like local knowledge and scientific knowledge. So I think there is a very there's a collaboration with great potential there. and not only because many times we said climate scientists need to be more connected with the educational systems, and imagine that you have to go and present your results with a better with a good designer, and kind of deliver and giving them the info, but it's not that. It's like trying to really think about research programs in collaboration with schools, right? Not delivering the results as a like transference of knowledge from the uh, super scientists to the people, right? I think we need like to create mutual collaboration where both schools and scientists get benefits for these collaborations. Great.
Hi. Nice like seminar and content. I was a bit curious. You mentioned about the lack of like student being absent toward like a social justice and social emotional aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Like, given that you were only showing like a poll, did you use like a
Mm-hmm.
specific metric, like for certain, like what kind
Mm-hmm.
of social justice issue you were trying to push them toward, or the emotion side?
Mm-hmm.
I was a bit curious about that because the
Yeah.
I think with climate change, things like this,
Mm-hmm.
usually people would either pull a lot of data or like show like a lot of pictures. But if it's
Mm.
happened in different countries, then people don't feel like it's relevant, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what we were looking at there was about other discussions in the socio-ecological justice. Was are the discussion of we search for intergenerational justice, like discussing about the future generations, or equality issues, like are we which are the consequences for maybe inequalities that arose with climate change issues. What are the consequences of, well, many times, for an example, schools were interested in understanding like the impact of a specific industry, for instance, forest industry, in pollution or degradation of soils, and they take measurement of that of polluted areas, and identified different areas around the schools where you can found that. Uh, so that's diagnosing your area, right? But what are the consequences of this? Like spaces for the discussion on how does this will affect like the community. What about the what is happening with the migratory processes? People are getting out of these little towns in rural areas to find more opportunities in the city, and or or more global migration processes that has consequences on inequality issues. But those topics were not considered, but rather they were more into kind of researching about like physical evidence on climate change. Do I make myself clear? I think that that and and there is not like a well taken care structure of planning on how will I conduct, I don't know, a reflection, a debate on things that are not like clearly established or defined, but rather it's important to create spaces for reflection. So on justice and socio-ecological justice was that, and in terms of emotional aspects, we specifically look for how can we talk about eco anxiety, or some different kinds of eco emotions, like I don't know if I am translating this well, but this like this idea of solastalgic, that there's like a nostalgic feeling about the future, and how to consider like what does uh, the consequences of climate change, how do you feel about this, created spaces for that kind of discussion. And there are resources. There is another, also going to the previous question, there's a kit of to work with the climate emotions that has been developing by the University of Washington. I forget the name right now, but I can send it afterwards to the organization to share it with you, because there has been a newly developed field of working with these emotions, and how to create like more hope, or more active hope for the future. And but when we took a look on the evidence of these almost 60 documents and planning that we revised, there was not a clear focus on those topics. And many times you like have a lesson on things that, I don't know, are putting in the center the sustainability of the village where you are living, and you do not discuss about the emotions behind that. I think it's important to take care about it, because this this kind of emotions can lead you also to kind of, it can freeze the kids, right? Like this is too hard. We can't do anything about it, for instance. And if you don't feel like classrooms are like a safe space to talk about this, it can be problematic, right? And so, and that it's also it's growing a lot on the literature on climate change education, and I think it's important to raise those alerts and share more experience on how to tackle this issue. And then that is why we think we put like professional reflection as an axis, as an important axis in teacher climate change education, because we need to create these spaces on what did you do when your kid raised this like a preoccupation, or was concerned about this. How did you did you took it, and what did you do with him? And those are very like small area things that where teachers know best, right? And if you think about teacher training just as transferring some important scientific climate knowledge, and you don't have the space for an open reflection on how are you dealing with with the classroom problems, it won't be as effective, right?
Great. Thank you so much. I know we are at 1 o'clock, but we have one more question here in the room. If you have just a couple minutes
Yes, of course.
to stay.
Hi, how are you? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Quick question. See if you agree with me or disagree. Regarding the mountain example that you give to the natives that you're trying to teach climate change, I will suggest you to stop suggesting their knowledge of medicine, so-called medicine, or I don't know what type of medicine you're talking about. Because they're ancient, their background, they used to chew coca leaves on the mountain to run up and down. I would suggest you to stop insinuating that knowledge that is not knowledge, because you don't know what it's doing to them. Second, I can tell you how I can use climate change to size coffee trade futures. It's a commodity here in New York, and how I size coffee in the farms to teach them climate change. Because of that, I was able to size the coffee on futures. That was it.
Okay, I didn't hear the second one. I think the first one I heard it better, but I have a little problem with the audio. But if you can repeat the
What
second
about
one.
here? This one?
Yeah, better.
From the
Great.
top. Regarding
Okay,
your
so the first
example
one,
about the mountain.
I understood it. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
And then which one was the one that you didn't capture?
Because I heard about the one about traditional medicine, but the second one I didn't
The
get.
second one, I can teach you how or tell you how I size coffee futures with climate change or climate future. So to understand climate and how it works,
Uh-huh.
and see how I can trade down the futures on coffee here in New York, and see how you can teach the farmers how to farm and how that does affect their yielding. That's how I can coffee trade futures, a commodity here in New York. That's no knowledge, that's just how it works.
Okay. Yeah. So regarding the first one, I think that there's yeah, I know we have to be very careful about this dialogue between scientific and local knowledge. Like but on the one side there's well, there's a everyday more institutionalized knowledge on this. It's not just like um, we have here like intercultural hospitals where you can be both attended by a traditional medicine man or a doctor, and there has been more every day more research on the
I'm
proprieties
concerned
of.
about their mental and their health.
Sorry.
I'm concerned. This is with all attendance.
You are concerned about what? Sorry.
Hold on. Battery.
Uh,
Hello. I'm concerned
hey.
about their health and their mental health with those psychedelic drugs. Do you get me?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
when they grow
I
up and they cannot do math because they took too many.
yeah. Yeah. In that case, yes, of course. But we are talking here about like well established like traditional treatments, not psychedelic necessarily. But we are working here on uh, like some herbs that helps you to heal your stomach ache, or like creating some nurseries in the schools with infusions, like low impact traditional medicine. And because yeah, we're working with little kids here, and but also I think that the thing that goes beyond this is that uh, many times this kind of activities help you to create a new relationship with the natural environment around your schools. You get to see other things. The kids kind of have now they understand that they are not just a tree, another leaf, another bush, but it has another properties. It can be used for different purposes, and they kind of get a sense of concern about the importance of conservancy of
Don't you
biodiversity.
think that it's important how to teach them to make money and how their farm can yield more coffee or whatever they're growing?
Yeah, and that's another thing. Like for and that's we do with the older kids. That's where we kind of get into this intersection about how do you say, being concerned about the natural and social environment of your school, and also get some uh, skills for like innovation, entrepreneurship, and there we have a lot of activities. I know, for instance, there's a school that we work in Colombia that there is this STEM competencies where you produce and add value to waste, for instance, and they were producing um, this product that works as that was used for heating, that were made by the residuals of the coffee industry. So how can we create value from waste, from disposals, for and for the and to kind of yeah, give them ideas on uh, um, like and this is, and maybe this is another thing, like how can we like create motivation for on kids for taking action. And there's two kinds of motivations, but this is something that we are researching also in another field. But you can feel like you can go like extrinsic or intrinsic motivation. And we you said like internal motivation can go like in a more transformational or transactional way. Both can be as useful for to create action. The transactional is like where you can find an opportunity to create a business to and that has like this sustainability guidelines. But you can also create this motivation for transformation that goes beyond your like transactional mobiles, right? And both are useful for creating climate change pro-environmental action. But this is I think that both are into this not only focus on creating more capacity to diagnose climate change, but rather to act and create pro-environmental issues that I don't know. It can both goes to your own like ideas on how to will you do it in your future, and where do you want to work, but also what are the if you want to make a change that go beyond your own interest, right? I think both can be a vehicle for change.
Great. Okay, thank you so much, Martin. We're at time. So I want to thank you along with everybody else for your wonderful presentation and answering so many of our questions. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I think there was a hand in the audience here. You can. I didn't get the. I can put in the chat my email. You can write me down. I would be happy to keep and continue conversations on this, and I hope this also help us to create this bridge between like climate science and the educational systems. So thank you for this opportunity, and we can stay in touch.
That would be great. Thank you so much. We'll make sure to get your email out to everybody that attended today for any follow-up questions. Thank you.